In this video, we're going to take a look at using acrylic paint and painting knives to create a still life painting of a few pears. And we're going to be working on canvas board for this, and I'm going to use a couple of different painting knives. Primarily, when you're applying paint to the surface, you're going to be using the back edge of the knife, depending on the effect that you're trying to accomplish. And you're going to be, of course, applying the paint very heavily to the surface. So you're going to use a lot of paint for this. Basically, when you are applying acrylic or oil, in this case it is acrylic paint, to a painting surface, you're going to be thinking about not only the color and the value, but also the texture that happens on the surface. Since you're putting the paint on so thick, you'll create an impasto effect on the surface, and that of course will affect the way the light behaves on the surface, since there'll be ridges and valleys, and the light will catch those and create the texture. So in this demonstration, I'm just starting with red, and then I created a more orange version of the red, so a little bit of a red-orange, and kind of gave that red a little bit of depth. And then I dropped a little bit of cast shadow behind these pears with a little bit of brown. And then once that's established, I'm going to go back with some yellow and green and mix up kind of a pear color, kind of a base pear color. And I'm going to let those colors kind of mix a little bit on the surface, kind of creating somewhat of a streaky look there, because I'm really focused in on texture here. After I've established the base color for the pears, I'm going to go back and create a little bit of a highlighted side. And to accomplish this, I'm using some lemon yellow mixed with titanium white, and I'm letting that light source come from the right side of the image. And I'm just going to put that on thick and build it up. And you have to almost let yourself go here if you're a very representational person and you're interested in the smooth textures and creating smooth blended transitions. That's not really going to happen here with the knife. So it's more of an impressionistic approach, if you will. Now I'm going to start to establish some of the shadow, some of the core shadow that exists on the pears. And to accomplish this, I'm using a little bit of blue mixed with that yellow-green color that we originally put down for the pear, and maybe just a touch of brown in there as well. I'm not using black. I want the shadowed area to have definitely a defined hue, in this case a cooler tonality. And I'm going to keep that core shadow consistent on all three of the pears. And maybe I'll bring a little bit of texture over to the mid-tone area of the pear as well. And just move that wet paint around on the surface, creating some more interesting textures. Now, since I've got that blue already on my knife, I'm going to go ahead and pull some of it down into the shadowed areas. Here again, this is the cast shadow areas underneath the pear. Here again, I want to create just a little bit of color in those shadowed areas. With that defined, I can go ahead and define the stems of the pear, again with a dark brown here and a little bit of blue. I'm also going to define a little bit of a highlighted side there. And you can also take the tip of the knife and scrape some paint off the surface if things get a little too thick. Now there are a few places where my canvas is showing through, so I'm going to go back and just clean those up and just spread the paint around a little bit so that no little white specks of the canvas can be seen. And now that my background's had a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to go back with a lighter red or a pink color and kind of lightly scrape it over the surface. And what will happen is a texture will be created there because there's a texture on the surface, and it will add a little bit more interest to the negative spaces around the pears. And then maybe I'll add a couple areas of brown just to add a little bit more contrast. And that's a quick look at using acrylic paint and applying it thickly with painting knives to create a still life painting.